All right, everyone, get ready, because today we are diving into some seriously mind-bending stuff about consciousness.
Oh, yeah, this one's a big one.
You guys know how we do it around here.
Yeah.
You share something that's really captured your attention, and we unpack it together.
Exactly. We take a deep dive into it.
And guys, let me tell you, this deep dive into Robert Pepperell's The Posthuman Condition is going to leave you questioning pretty much everything you thought you knew about consciousness.
It really is fascinating stuff.
So buckle up, because we are going to explore this wild idea, this mind-blowing idea that consciousness might actually not be confined to the brain.
You know, what I find so fascinating about Pepperell's argument is that he's not just suggesting, oh, our understanding of consciousness is kind of incomplete. He's like completely taking apart the foundation of how we've always viewed consciousness.
Yeah.
This brain in a jar model that he calls it, this idea that our brains are just kind of like solely responsible for all of our thoughts and our emotions and our experiences, that's totally up for debate, you see.
Oh, wow. Okay, so you're saying this whole thing, this whole concept that our brains are like the end-all be-all of ourselves is what it's being challenged.
Oh, absolutely. And Pepperell, he traces this whole idea of brain determinism, that's what he calls it, all the way back to ancient Greece, to figures like Descartes.
Descartes, yeah.
Who very famously believed that the mind and body were totally separate.
Right.
And it's such a powerful concept. It's really interesting how much it's just kind of like woven its way into our culture and our scientific understanding for centuries, for like forever.
Yeah, it's kind of like ingrained in us at this point. I mean, I'm already very intrigued and maybe a little apprehensive about where this is going. So when we talk about like what Pepperell sees as the flaws in this model, what is he pointing to?
So he argues that this brain in a jar model, while influential, it's just way too simple to really grasp the true nature of consciousness. He brings in all of these like really big, really heady concepts from different areas of science to back up his claims, like quantum physics,
Okay.
chaos theory,
Right.
even complexity theory, just to illustrate how the universe operates in ways that just like totally defy linear and predictable like explanations.
So you're saying that even like our scientific methods might be holding us back from fully getting these bigger concepts like consciousness.
That's exactly what Pepperell's suggesting, yeah. He argues that because our understanding of the brain itself is based on these potentially outdated models, we're kind of limited in our ability to really even comprehend something as complex as consciousness. It's like we're trying to, I don't know, understand a holographic image by just looking at like one tiny piece.
Oh, okay. I'm starting to, I think, get the scope of what we're dealing with here. So he's not just kind of like tweaking our understanding of consciousness. He's proposing like a complete like paradigm shift. But before we go too far down this road, before we get into like what his alternative model is, can you break down some of these complex scientific concepts for me? Like you mentioned quantum physics and chaos theory. Can you just kind of like explain those and how they connect to consciousness? Because I feel like we need to get on the same page here.
Right.
Okay, so we've kind of established here that Pepperell sees some pretty serious limitations, right, with this brain in a jar model of consciousness.
Definitely.
But then what does he give us? What's the alternative? What's his model?
So instead of seeing consciousness as this thing, stuck in the brain, he offers this model that's so much bigger and more interconnected. He calls it a non-linear distributed model of consciousness.
Okay, now hold on a second. Those words, I got to be honest with you. Nonlinear, distributed, it's a little jargony for me. Can you break that down? Like what does that actually look like?
Sure. Imagine, if you will, that consciousness it's not static, it's not fixed. It's more of a dynamic, fluid process. So instead of your senses just like feeding the brain information,
Right.
they're actively shaping, they're being shaped by your consciousness.
Oh, interesting.
Like it's this loop.
So it's not just a one-way street. It's not just like brain gets information and then, we experience. It's a two-way street. Our experiences actually mold our consciousness.
Yeah, exactly. And he takes it even a step further by like bringing in this concept of energy. Like at the most basic level, everything is energy.
Hold on a minute.
It's all like in a constant state of flux.
Are we talking subatomic particles here? Like how does that tie into consciousness?
Exactly. Even at the subatomic level, you have this constant dance of energy, this interplay, of forces and particles. And what Pepperell suggests is that all of our interactions, like our thoughts, our emotions, sensations, even our relationships, they all just feed into this like dynamic energy flow that makes up consciousness.
So instead of like a brain in a jar, it's more like we're each a node in this massive web, right?
Right.
Of energy, of information, and our consciousness. It's not just shaped by, but it also shapes this universal energy flow.
Yeah, it's really pretty profound.
That's a really profound concept. It really is. And it makes you think, if it's not just limited to our brains, where does it even, like, where does it begin? Where does it end?
That's a great question, and that's what Pepperell wants us to think about.
Yeah.
It has some pretty big implications if you think about it, like how we see the world, ourselves, our place in everything.
Okay, you got me. You got me. I need to know, what are the implications? Does he talk about this in the book? Okay, so we've gone down this rabbit hole, right? This idea that consciousness, it's not just our brains. It's like connected to everything around us, maybe even like the entire universe. But what does it all actually like mean? Does Pepperell even like explore the implications of this whole like distributed consciousness model?
Oh, yeah, for sure. He gets into some really interesting what-if scenarios, especially in the Q&A section of the book.
Okay.
One of the big ones, and this one really stood out to me, was this whole question of artificial intelligence.
Yeah, because if it's not just about, our brains, like our biological brains, does that mean that like we could create a machine, that's actually like sentient?
Exactly. And then think about, like, what would that even mean ethically? Like, how do we deal with that?
Totally.
Pepperell, like, dives right into those questions, and he basically says, look, if we're stuck with this brain in a jar way of thinking, we're missing the whole picture.
Right.
We're probably going to totally miss the mark when it comes to even, like, understanding how to create true AI. You know what I mean?
It's like we're trying to like build a skyscraper with like, instructions for like a bicycle or something. Like it's not the right approach.
Exactly. And that brings up so many ethical dilemmas. Like, what if we do create a machine that has this kind of consciousness? What do we owe it? How do we treat it? It's wild to think about.
Yeah. It's like, is it a being then?
Yeah.
Like it's really mind-blowing to even like consider it. And it sounds like he's saying like we got to start thinking about these things now before it's too late, right?
Absolutely. And it's not just AI either.
Right.
We're talking about consciousness being this universal energy flow. I mean, what does that even mean for the meaning of life?
Exactly, yeah.
Like it changes everything.
Like our whole purpose, our connection to the universe. I mean, it's a lot.
Yeah.
And, it's funny because it makes me think about something you said earlier.
Yeah.
About like even our scientific methods. Maybe they're not like equipped to really understand something like this. So like, does he offer any guidance? Like how should we even be like approaching these massive questions?
Well, he talks a lot about, staying open. Like we have to be open to possibilities, even if they seem kind of crazy or they challenge everything we thought we knew.
Okay.
Like be curious. Ask questions, be willing to listen to different ideas, even if they sound, a little out there.
It's like we have to completely change the way we think, right? Like step outside of like the box of our current understanding.
Totally, yeah.
And it's really got me thinking. It's a call to action, that's for sure. So as we kind of like wrap up our deep dive here into Pepperell's work, we want to hear from you. Like, how has this changed your perspective? What questions are you grappling with? And where do you go from here? Let us know because we'd love to keep this conversation going.